For the opposition's view now, I want to bring in the Shadow Education Minister, Julian Leeser. Welcome back to the program.
Good to be with you, PK.
Is the naval blockade of the Straits of Hormuz that's been announced by Donald Trump and begins later tonight, is that an escalation of this war in your view?
Well, look, I'm sad that the diplomatic talks in relation to this matter failed. It's a diplomatic solution is in everyone's interests. And ultimately, we want to see freedom of navigation in the Straits of Hormuz because that's about reopening trade routes. It's about getting oil supply across the globe. It's about reducing the pressure Australians are facing at the petrol pump. In some respects, it's unsurprising that the US has gone down this route of a naval blockade. It's a way of putting some pressure on the regime to come back to the table. That's as I see it.
And we've just had confirmation there from Pat Conroy, who's obviously Cabinet Minister, that even if a request was made by the United States, and the government says a request has not been made, but even if it was made, the Australian government would not consider it to be part of any potential action to help the US. Do you think that's reasonable?
Well, I thought Pat sounded confused in that interview, I have to say, Patricia. I think, the junior defence minister should be very clear on these points. I think the ordinary course of things is that if you are asked by your most important ally to participate in these matters, you need to consider the request that's before you and to give it proper consideration. That I know certainly what a coalition government would do. We would consider a request properly that was put before us, and I think that that's what the government would actually do in such circumstances.
Well, he said no. Their position is that they would not be part of this action.
Well, as I say, I thought his interview with you sounded confused on this point. I think if our most important ally asks us to consider, provides a request to us, we should consider that request. We have to remember what's at stake here. I mean, Iran is a criminal terrorist regime that commits human rights abuses at home and exports terror abroad, including to this country, where it committed at least 2 terrorist attacks on our own soil. It's a country that's executed 30,000 of its own people in recent times. Its formal execution rate, according to the media today, of people in its country includes 1,700 people. It abuses ethnic minorities, religious minorities, women, LGBTI people. And now its regime, the IRGC, is trying to put a terror toll on ships in the Straits of Hormuz in order to fund its activities. We've got to consider any serious request.
And do you think it's in Australia's national interest to actually send a warship to participate in such an action?
We've got to determine that based on a range of factors, including what other things Australian ships might be called on to do, what else is in our interest. It is in our interest to find a diplomatic solution to this conflict. It is in our interest to ensure the freedom of navigation. It is in our interest to reopen the trade routes. It is in our interests to ensure that oil supply can get through so that there is a less pressure on Australians at the petrol bowser and that there is a lasting peace in the Middle East.
Donald Trump says he doesn't care if Iran returns to the negotiating table. I mean, what do you think of that position? Do you care?
Well, look, the president says all sorts of things. I'm not going to get into a commentary about what he said, but I think ultimately, this is about trying to find a diplomatic solution. We need to try and find a diplomatic solution because that's in everyone's interests.
You have a large Persian community in your electorate. Do you believe it is still their desire for this conflict to continue?
I think the Persian community in my electorate wants to see an end to a criminal regime that has committed some of the worst human rights abuses against its own people for nearly half a century. The murder of 30,000 people, many of whom just wanted to protest so that they could have lives of the sort that Australians are able to leave was extraordinary. This is a regime that was trying to build a nuclear weapon to attack its neighbours. It's a regime that's committed terrorist attacks against our country.
But do you accept, though, that none of the actions look like they're actually doing anything to actually demolish this regime?
Well, the Ayatollah and several of his closest henchmen have been taken out.
The IRGC doesn't change the regime, though. It's just the personnel at the top, isn't it?
Well, the nuclear and weapons capacity of the regime has been degraded. The anti-aircraft capacity of the regime has been degraded. All of these things have been things that I know the Persian community in my electorate support. I mean, ultimately, it would be good to see a regime that was a Western liberal democracy in Iran. That's certainly the desire of people in my electorate. But in terms of where we are today, what we want to see is an end to the present conflict. We want to see, the freedom of navigation. We want to see downward pressure on prices that Australians are paying at the petrol pump, and we want to see a peaceful solution across the Middle East.
Is the Prime Minister doing the right thing by continuing his travel through Asia this week? He's going to Brunei, he's going to Malaysia. He's trying to resolve this.
Well, if he's going there and can secure deals that will ensure that Australians get more petrol in the petrol pump, that's a good thing. But we need to see the fruit of those deals, not just handshakes and photo opportunities. That's what Australians will judge the Prime Minister's trip by.
And, of course, ultimately the deals do matter, that's true, but doesn't it demonstrate that the government is doing everything it can to deal with our potential supply issues?
Well, this just depends on what he can achieve there. I mean, we've been very critical with the lack of transparency from the government. We've been calling for the government to provide a dashboard-style scenario where they will come clean with Australians about where there are the petrol shortages, what they're doing about it. That's what people in New Zealand have got from their government. We in Australia deserve the same.
The government has been raising the possibility of cuts or an overhaul of the NDIS. Now, of course, there's already some changes they've announced on the NDIS that do very much affect your portfolio as well, education, where there would be an assistance at a state level to deal with some children who are on the NDIS. Do you support efforts to really try and recalibrate the NDIS now?
I support efforts to be transparent on the part of the government as to what effects the changes they're proposing to the NDIS will have on the education sector. There are many teachers, there are many families that are concerned about this. I called upon the Education Minister, Jason Clare, at his statement that he made in the Parliament recently on school funding, to be very clear about this matter. Instead, there was a throwaway sentence about the changes to the NDIS and the way it would affect schools that didn't provide any reassurance to parents, any reassurance to teachers, and I think Australians deserve better.
Julian Leeser, it's always great to speak to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Patricia.
Now, as we were discussing there, we are just under a